5:34, we'll call the meeting to order. Clint, if you'd provide invocation for us.
Let's pray. Lord, we come to you thanking you for this opportunity to come together to improve our community. Please bless our citizens and city leadership and give this committee guidance and understanding in all matters discussed. In your name, amen.
Please stand for our flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If you would call the roll, please.
Chairman Jackson.
Here.
Vice Chairman Knight.
Here.
Commissioner Horner.
Here.
Commissioner Kerr.
Here.
Commissioner Newsom.
Here. First order in business under consent items is approving the minutes. Consideration and approval for Planning Commission meeting minutes on 6/4/24.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Chairman Jackson.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knight.
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr.
Yes.
Commissioner Horner.
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom.
Yes. Being that there are no consent items, we'll move to the public hearing portion. 3A, consideration of approval for replat request at the southeast corner of Willow Street and North Forest Avenue. Mr. Acoltz.
Y'all hear me? Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So Rack Investments owns a property, like it said, on the southeast corner of Willow Street and Northeast 4th. The zoning, the entire area is zoned R3, including the property. The parcel's about a half an acre, and the goal of the applicant is to replat the property so that the lot is one lot instead of two kind of differently sized lots, and then put a sixplex on that property with R3 zoning. And again, just to give some R3 standards, the R3 minimum lot size is 8,000 plus 1,200 for every unit after two. So again, this sixplex meets those standards. And then again, minimum lot frontage 80 feet. This is very much in line with the 2040 comprehensive plan of creating housing that's walkable to downtown and walkable to the college. So staff would recommend the approval of this request.
Any questions for staff?
Just as a matter of disclosure, the current owner bought this property from the university.
I don't read, maybe you maybe haven't even gotten this far yet, but have they looked into the parking requirements on this?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's going to be enough?
Yes, sir. I believe the way that the layout is, and there might be a concept on there, but the layout is that there's 6 and then small driveways with the garages.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the, so what brought that up was when I was looking at it, there's, we have a section that says it's required to have off-street parking. In our little chart, there's nothing listed next to townhomes, but in the past, and in looking at the other R3 things, it says 2.5 spaces per unit. So just from the concept that's on here, I just want to make sure that they're looking to make sure that's a viable option.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely take note of it.
Any other questions for Reed? Is the applicant present?
I'm here to represent Rack Investments.
Okay. Is there any comments that you would like to make? Okay. I guess you heard the comments about parking.
I did.
Okay. Thank you. there anyone who would like to speak for or against? Any discussion?
Is there a structure on the property right now?
No,
It's
it was.
vacant.
Yeah, it was
It's vacant lot.
demolished. Yeah. I think it was formerly a 6 or 8 plex there.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Chairman Jackson,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Horner,
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom,
Yes.
Motion passes. 3B is consideration of approval for a rezone request at 407 East Georgia Street. Mr. Eckholtz?
Yes, sir. So, again, 407 East Georgia Street. Mr. Garcia approached staff with the goal of building another home for his family on the lot with a long-term intention to replat, divide it in two, and have 2 homes. And the current zoning is A1, which doesn't allow for that. Current A1 standards say that any property that's A1 under 5 acres cannot have a home unless it was platted that way before 1983. So Mr. Garcia approached us for a rezone request from A1 to R3. If you look at the map, R3, there's a whole R3 section across the street from Mr. Garcia, so that was a natural choice, even though the intention is to have a more single-family use for the property. And then just to give you some more background about the property, it's a little over 6 acres, right at 78 in Georgia. And then the same R3 minimum lot standards, but again, the intention is single family. And then just to note, landscaping requirement, I know we've been trying to note some requirements in any single family or commercial builds. And then, yeah, so staff would recommend approving this replat request. I think there's probably going to be discussion if R1 or R3, what is better. I think this 78 frontage in the adjacent R3 is definitely a case, but we would recommend it as a staff, and then we'd love to hear public opinion.
Are there any questions? Reed, can you walk me through the thought on why R3 versus R1?
Yes, so R3, there's a whole adjacent section across from Georgia that's all R3. And I know that that's typically been the approach. If it's adjacent, then that's a consideration at least. And then generally future land use also shows the residential. And I think it's low density, but yes, it's low density. So
this is also going from ag, and it seems like the use is going to be R1. So typically in the past, when we've been able to, we've had some sort of transition rather than butting up something that has disparity from like R3 to ag. So that's why I'm questioning if the use is R1. They don't intend to use anything beyond R1. Why we're granting additional.
Yeah. And I guess maybe the concern at the time was spot zoning, because 78 is the big frontage and you have to go across to one parcel that's R1 over there and the rest is A1, but it was
So
just a thought.
on the map that was submitted, everything, so this is A1, everything to the west, east,
across.
and south is all ag.
Yes, sir. But to the north, it's R3, correct? Yes, sir.
Is there any other questions for staff?
I had a, excuse me. So my comment that I have in here in my notes is, I'm not sure I'm understanding the reason for the request. Because we
Okay.
can build a single-family home in an A1 zone.
Yeah, if it's over 5 acres, but the situation is that the intention long-term is to take this 6-acre property and replat it into 2. They're starting with the rezone and then moving to the replat later. And to replat it down the middle and have 2 3-acre parcels, one with the current home that's on there and then one with another.
Okay. Is there a reason why we didn't do it all at one go?
Just the applicant's choice.
Okay.
And the applicant is here, so.
So this doesn't, this change right now, if this change were to be approved, this really doesn't give them any permission to do anything at this point other than just have an R3 property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they would have to remove, if they weren't to replat, they'd have to remove the current structure on there to even get a building permit.
Sure.
And our building inspector has made that clear.
That was my thought as well, is if they were going to issue a building permit, that maybe it was going to be contingent upon removing the mobile home that's there now, or.
Yes, sir.
I know that's not before us today, but I was curious as to what the plan was.
So, Reed, one question I had, everything to the north, other than one square there, is essentially R3 already, correct?
Yes,
But
ma'am.
I don't see any development that suggests that there's legitimately R3 building in that region. Is that true?
No, there's a lot of, it's just smaller lots that, or older homes that were kind of, I would imagine like the overlay zoning of R3. A lot of single family.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Would you like to speak? I'm sorry, would you mind coming up to the microphone? We're recording, so we want to make sure, if you would state your name and, thank you, sorry.
Adriana Leva, and I'm the translator. And the only question that he has is that if it's necessary to remove the building that's currently there, and the reason why.
I don't think it would be necessary to remove what you have currently. And this would get into more of Reed's department in issuing a building permit. So currently you wouldn't be able to build two homes on a single piece of property with your A1 zoning. So that's probably the reason for this, at least maybe not my understanding, the reason for this change to an R3 zone is because you maybe are wanting to build two homes on the same property and leave those two homes. I'm guessing here, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Que dice que no es necesario mover la remodelación, que es como para si quieres hacer una casa atrás de la otra casa que está ya hecha, supuestamente ahora, están diciendo, y que eso tiene que ser más como con permisos después de que ya empiecen a hacer lo que es la obra.
No,
¿Ok? ¿Tienes alguna otra pregunta?
no, nomás. Entonces no tenemos que mover la trailer, ¿verdad?
No, dijeron que supuestamente no, después de que se empiece a hacer lo que es digamos que el trámite del permiso y todo eso, que pueden dejarla atrás. Okay? No, he doesn't have any more questions.
I have a couple, if that's okay.
Okay.
So it's not necessary for him to remove the existing home that's there, but there may be another step with the city in terms of doing a replat before he can build another.
Okay.
I want to make sure that's clear.
Dice que lo que sí quiere que estés de acuerdo es de que tiene que hacer un replantamiento antes de que empieces a como hacer lo que vas a hacer ahorita. O sea, quiere decir que a lo mejor la tengas que mover o cambiarla antes de poder hacer lo que estás haciendo. Eso sí, eso quiero que quede claro de que tienes que como replantear para que así puedas construir.
Okay.
¿Ok?
Estamos viviendo ahí nosotros, o sea, no tengo otra parte donde vivir.
And even if they were living in the mobile home that's located there at the land, they would eventually have to remove that for them in order to build the new home.
No, they wouldn't have to remove it. They would have another step with the city, which is divide the land into parcels.
Okay. For them to go ahead and just build
So they would
one
need to-
land and then just leave
Yeah,
it.
so it's one per parcel. So
Okay.
we could divide the land and then you
Dice
could
que lo
build.
que pueden hacer es que puedes dividir el terreno para que así dejes tu casa o la trailer en uno y ya como hacer la otra en el otro.
Está dividido en 3 pedazos.
Sí, es lo que están diciendo que sí, eso es lo que sí podrías hacer, como nomás construir en uno y en el otro dejar la otra.
No,
Okay? ¿Tienes alguna otra pregunta?
no, eso es todo.
He doesn't have any more questions. Do you have any more
Okay.
questions?
I do have another. I just want to make sure that this is going to be like a single family home rather than like multifamily. Was that the intent?
¿Es una intención que sea para una casa familiar o una single family o una casa multifamiliar?
Son 3.500 pies, pero lo estamos haciendo así porque pues, de repente yo tengo familia que viene de México y tengo que tener algo para un cuarto
¿Cómo
para
le
ellos.
considera multifamiliar? Multifamily plan, and it's 3,500 square feet.
So, but it
It's
would
a
be,
family
it's
plan.
not going to be a duplex or triplex
no,
or
no,
apartment.
duplex or less.
It's one home.
It's just for one home, yeah.
Okay.
It's for them. It's
Okay.
intended to build for them as a family.
Would he have any issue with it being rezoned R1, which is intended for single family homes rather than R3, which is intended for multifamily?
Okay, dice que si en este caso como R1 solamente está entendido para single family, que si tienes algún problema que lo mantengan con single family que es R1, ¿no? He doesn't have any problem with that, he
Okay.
says.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against? If you would, please come to the mic and state your name.
James Wayne Cotton. I live at a property adjacent across Highway 78, and I have no problem with it being rezoned to R1. That's what I would prefer to see that done, rather than R3, where those are all single-family homes in that area right now. The R3 across north of Georgia, I think was done years ago for some other reason. Nobody seems to understand why they were rezoned to R3, because it was all single-family homes in there, and it has been forever. I'm also concerned about if we put too much density of population in there, that the sewer line down Georgia is an old sewer line, and I don't think that infrastructure is large enough to to service that. Now, there is a high-pressure sewer line that comes from the sports complex that dissects part of that property, and there's a high-pressure natural gas line that dissects that property. So, but I'm not opposed to the R1, and I appreciate you guys asking those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a comment along those lines, you know, if council decides to grant the R3, the capacity for sewer and those other things will be verified, you know, before building permits are there, so that would be part of the process. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against? Is there any discussion?
I'm thinking along the same lines with your questioning, that if it's their intent for this to be R1, then R1 makes more sense to me, even considering the neighborhood that it's in. And the R3 doesn't, I think Reed's right, the R3 is a blanket that happened in that area at some point in some point in our history here. But I think since it's their intent to be R1, that's a more natural progression historically for us, from A to R, from A to an R1. So I'm thinking along those same lines. And I don't know, this might be a good Whitney question. In our chart of more restrictive, less restrictive, we're able to go one direction and not the other. Is suggesting an R1 versus the R3 going the right direction to be able to make that stipulation this evening, if that's what we decide?
I believe you can, because you put everyone on notice that R3 was the potential, so you can go down, you can't go up.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So can we motion to change it to R1, or do we have to? Okay, well, I'll make the motion to approve as an R1.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Call for a vote, please. Yes.
Vice Chairman Knight,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Horner,
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom.
Yes.
So before we continue to the next item, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that this is a recommending board. So that's a recommendation that will go to City Council, and they will hear this again next week at 6 o'clock. So next Tuesday at 6 o'clock, they're the ones who have final approval. We're simply a recommending board, and we're recommending R1 rather than R3. So.
Yeah, Reed.
Just
will you-
Reed, we just make sure the applicant knows that gets them where they need to be for their intended usage and purpose.
Yes, sir, absolutely, thank you.
3C, consideration of approval for a replat request at 4202 Wilson Street.
So this one is really a really interesting case. The applicant has approached the city for a replat so that the parcel to the east could be sold and built on as a homestead for a family. So they've been really unselfish with their time trying to figure out some orphaned parcel issues. And if you see on the map, basically the biggest issue was that there was no access to Wilson. And so this applicant has deeded property in a different name, still owned by the applicant, to this Basha property to give 80 foot of access to that back 20-acre parcel. And then that parcel just to the east of the part that's sticking out to the east, almost like it looks like a finger. There's a several acre parcel that can now be built on over there. So should this be approved. And again, current zoning for this parcel is A1. There's no intention to do anything on that parcel, but beside fix the orphaned issue. And with that, staff would recommend approving this replat request.
I do have some comments I'll probably save. to that section. I don't know that I have any questions, but if you all do.
I just have one question, and Reed may know the answer. Did they look at an access of some sort to that property to the east instead of this? I feel like we've just traded one issue for another and haven't really done much, so.
Yeah, so the issue is that in our code, and I should have said this, but in our code, parcels technically need frontage, like actual touching frontage to a street or road. And at the time, the thought was, hey, take that several acre parcel that's changing ownership and put deed property on that side, but that's a different owner with less space, less land, and so this was the approach that they took with the surveyor.
Are there any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against? Moving to the discussion portion, I'll say, this is an attempt to correct a replatting issue, that was brought up. And I certainly appreciate, the efforts, that the owners made, to try to correct that. I know and respect the owner, and believe he's a contributor to our community. But as far as our processes go, I'm not sure that this is a fix. This is a pretty impassable strip of land. So whether it meets the letter of the law, I'm not positive, but I don't believe it meets the intent in terms of trying to correct what was the issue that was brought up. One of the issues that I have with the strip, the way it presents now, in addition to it being an impassable from one side to the other, is if this were to be developed, this one means of access is insufficient. Where it's going to be, unless there's more than one home on here, it's going to require two means of entry, and this is not going to accomplish that. So anyways, again, to reiterate, I do appreciate the efforts that's made. I do have some reservation about approving as is, and I've also invited Mr. Markham to make comments ahead of council meeting if you'd like to.
I don't know that I can say anything that the chairman hasn't already said. I just remind the commission that this situation was created by impermissibly deeding a lot that's on the east end. And so had it been done appropriately, it would have been platted, and there could have been reserved an ingress and egress strip or a frontage strip along Larkspur, and that wasn't done. And that's unfortunate, but it wasn't. And I agree, the owner here is a contributor to the community. If he was an accountant, this would be April 14th. This is his busy day of the year, so that, I'm sure that's why he's not here. But I agree with the chairman in that I'm not sure, maybe the letter of the law is adhered to by providing 80 feet of frontage along Wilson, but it's not real access. As it stands now, it's impassable, and I think the chairman's right. If anything were ever to be a building permit applied or that subject property sought to be platted or divided, there would need to be additional access to a public street, and it's not there. I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think this is it. Now, certainly the commission or the council could say, well, there's frontage, whether it's usable or not, but as it stands right now, it remains an orphaned piece of property, if not by appearance, certainly by use.
play devil's advocate here because I actually kind of like this solution to it, and here's why. The reality is, this is not gonna be usable, this is never gonna be usable, they can't do diddly squat with this piece of property. But everything over to the east is pretty high density housing at this point. I mean, not compared to what we would consider high density housing, but there's lots and lots of houses over there. This is kind of a gap in the middle with nothing there. It's A1. They're meeting the letter of the law, which is what we've asked them to do. They know there's no guarantee that they can ever do anything with this property, that they can ever build anything on this property, and they're basically saying, cool, we're gonna waste 20 acres here in prime Durant, city of Durant, we're just gonna waste 20 acres that we can't do anything with. If they wanna do that with their property in order to sell this other little bitty chunk on the other side, I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't care if that's what they wanna do. I don't know if that's the best use of 20 acres, but it's their property, they've met the letter of the law. It really doesn't harm anything in that area. It gives kind of a nice little agricultural gap there. I'm okay with it. I mean, I don't have any issue at all with this. Obviously, they're not gonna be able to build the houses that they've got going on the other side of Larkspur. They're not gonna be able to put any housing developments or anything like that there. The best they could hope for, if it's 20 acres, would be maybe to divide it up into 4 parcels, 4 houses on it, 5-acre lots. I don't think that's an unreasonable use of the property, and even then, they're gonna have to figure out how to construct a road to get back to any of those 4 lots, and that's not the city's problem. So, I guess my thing is, yes, we're wasting property, but at the same time, it is their property to waste. It causes no problems for the city of Durant, no issues beyond they're wasting their own property. So,
If you don't mind
But
me
Ms. Kerr,
continuing the.
I think that the avoidance of waste is exactly the reason we have the plating statute, or the plating ordinances, and that is, had the owner, before splitting off this east parcel, properly platted, they could have reserved access to Larkspur, and then this 20 acres is profoundly useful. And it is, when you get up there, it's very usable, but there's no access to it as it stands right now. The strip that's been added in a yellow photo or yellow drawing appears useful, but it's not. And you couldn't divide it into 4 lots as it stands now, because not only would all 4 lots have to have frontage to a public street, and there'd probably have to be 2 public streets, and they simply messed up by not reserving a strip to Larkspur when they parceled off that east. But again, it's up to the commission, but I think I agree with you in that it creates a wasted parcel, but that's exactly the reason why we have plating ordinances, is so that we can minimize wasted parcels within the city limits. If you're in the county, you do whatever you want to do, but they're in the city limits. So
it's a philosophical difference. I mean,
sure.
That's all it is. My attitude is, it's your property to waste. Theirs is, we want better city planning. Because really and truly, in 20, 30 years, we're going to see somebody come back and go, well, it's a hardship on me, and I can't do what I want to do with this property. And there's probably a different board that's going to feel sorry for them and say, well, let's see what we can do. But at the same time, I don't really have an issue with wasting people's property if that's what they want to do with it.
I've got a clarifying question for you, Whitney, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So I may not quote you exactly, so my apologies, but we're talking about this parcel becoming unusable. Are you talking about because of the manner in which it's being developed, or for some other reason?
Unusable for any sort of major development. The most you could get out of there, and I think Mr. Markham's correct, when I said you could divide it up into 4, that was based on acreage more so than anything else, but he is right in that you're going to have that access problem. So realistically, you may have a piece of property that's 20 acres and you can't put any more than 1 house on that 20 acres, assuming that somebody wants to pay to build a road that may go through a pond through that, back there to that 20 acres.
Well,
so
in the creek.
I don't know anybody who's going to want to spend that kind of money to put a house back there, but people do all kinds of crazy things, and for the right person, right buyer, that's a wonderful piece of property in the middle of Durant, in city limits, and they've got 20 acres with no super close neighbors. So
I think one of the issues that I have is, you know, to Mr. Markham's point, is still is in essence orphaned. But the change that we're making isn't changing or fixing that, but it's giving the illusion that there's access there, which may cause the future issues that you brought up about, you know, someone either claiming a hardship or, you know, some other request down the road. You know, there's not much communication that passes from owner to owner, just by nature. So do we give in my opinion, this is almost worse than leaving it orphaned.
I would disagree, but like I said, it's a philosophical difference, so.
Why would you disagree with that this is an improvement?
So from my perspective, the city is trying to control, and as well they should, they're trying to control and manage the development. But there's also a person's right to use the property as they see fit, as they want to use it. My attitude is if you have met the legal requirements, whether real, not real, anything else, I mean, to be quite honest, the law is a bunch of smoke and mirrors at the best of times. So if you've met the legal requirements and this is what you want to do with your property, I personally think that landowners should have the freedom to do what they want to do with their property if they are aware of the consequences down the road that could be coming. I think this meeting has made everybody more than aware. There's minutes to this effect. I don't see a need to babysit or micromanage the landowner to keep them from doing what they want to do if they've met the spirit and that, well, if they've met the letter of the law. So it's just a philosophical difference.
Makes sense. Thanks for commenting. Any other discussion?
I have a question, maybe for Reed. I think that's probably a 5-acre parcel to the east that is along Larkspur. Is that correct?
A little over
it's not
2
in,
acres.
It's not in question here, but it's how many?
2 acres.
Oh, it's 2 acres.
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna ask if you had seen any development proposal come to your office for that piece of property.
No, sir.
No.
Just single family.
There's been a request to plat it before.
Yeah, I remember the request to plat, but I was talking about any sort of development, like, is there the reason I'm asking that is I was thinking, is there the possibility of a road in from that this 2-acre owner would be willing to put in as access to, you know, I don't know what they're planning to do with that land. If it's a single family home, then that's null and void comment.
Shane, from memory, it seems like we had that conversation at the time, and they were not able to get the layout they wanted with the road, so that was not the intent.
That's what I remember. At one time, there was a request to plat that east parcel, that 2 acres or whatever it is, into
Right.
3 lots. And there was maybe an unwillingness to sacrifice one for access to Larkspur. And as my understanding, and I don't know this to be the truth, but my understanding is that the owner of the subject property may have even approached adjoining landowners along Larkspur to see if they could get access. And it wasn't successful, or maybe it didn't go very far. That's just my understanding. I don't know that to be absolutely true. So I know there's been efforts made to do that.
Sure.
Any other discussion?
I see both sides of what's happened. I think we probably all do.
Yeah, I do too.
I agree with Whitney that it meets the letter of the law. I don't agree that I think this is how we should be dividing property, and we seem to have this same conversation after the fact several times a year. I don't know how you stop it, other than maybe it's getting better, maybe it's not, but this just doesn't seem to be the road forward.
Is there a motion?
I could make a motion, but I think I might be in a camp by myself over here, so that's probably not gonna be super effective.
One way to find out.
Well, I would make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Vice Chairman Knight? Yes, but you have to vote now.
Oh, my vote is no.
Your vote is no, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Chairman Jackson?
Hang on just 1 second. So you seconded the motion to approve?
I seconded her motion, but I'm not approving.
Just wanted to clarify. Okay, thank you. And you called me next?
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I'm voting no.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Horner?
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom?
Yes.
So the motion passed. Again, same comment as last time. This is an advisory board. That recommendation and this discussion will be passed to council. So, 3D, consideration of approval for rezone request at 3820 West University Boulevard.
Yeah, this last one is a rezone request from an individual looking to sell their property as a residential property. The interesting part about this property is it's residential in C1 and it's surrounded by, it's residential with R1 use surrounded by R3, but it's zoned a C1. The future land use shows that area as mixed use, and the request is a rezone to R3. The lot is about an acre, and again, just the sentiment behind this rezone has to do with selling the property and lending and having the right zoning in place. And with that in mind, the staff would recommend the approval of the zoning change from C1 to R3.
I believe we've seen this one before and recently. Is there any other questions from staff?
I didn't go back and look at this from a couple of months ago, but do I recall correctly that we sent the option with them to change to R3 versus the R1 that they had originally requested?
Yes, yeah,
that's
that was
correct? Okay.
the case, I think, 2 months ago.
I think it was our recommendation that it be changed to R3.
That's what I was trying to say.
What's on the north side of that property? Okay, so I know there's a okay, because there's a retail gas station.
There's a convenience store right next door to this piece of property,
okay.
yeah.
And
Could we put the display on page 32, please?
Let me pull it up.
yeah, I'm familiar. with that.
Yeah, so it would be above that.
Because the maps were entered incorrectly the first time.
Are there any other
My
maps?
apologies.
I think it would be actually be page 28, maybe.
And here's zoning and future land use if we need it.
Would is the applicant here? Would they like to speak? Would you like to say anything on her behalf? You're not required to. You're offered an opportunity to.
Yeah, we've been under, this is like, we have a contract, I'm a real estate agent, I'm the owner's real estate agent. We've had 3 contracts, we're in the 3rd contract. But, yeah, we got the apartments to the east and the north, and then we have the gas station to the west. So it's surrounded, and then across the street, there's also R3. And y'all recommended R3, and it was more of a legality last time. They didn't vote on it in the city council meeting because when we originally applied, we applied R1. So to go through the proper channels, get in the paper as R3, that's why we're doing it again. So, there you go.
Thank you.
We've talked a lot on the phone, haven't we?
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks, Reed.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against? Any discussion? We have a motion.
I'll motion to approve the
I'll second.
rezone to R3.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Knight?
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Horner?
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom?
Yes.
Is there any new business to discuss?
No, sir, not on my end.
Thank you.
Make motion to adjourn.
We have a motion for adjournment. Have a second?
Second.
Call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Vice,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Kerr?
Yes.
Commissioner Horner?
Yes.
Commissioner Newsom?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you all. Appreciate it.